What is the meaning of life? Is there even a goal? Or is the meaning simply to avoid suffering and try to be happy? How can you achieve that when time is so cruel to you and the ones you love? And life in general seems an awful lot like forced labor, almost like we are all listening to a song that tells us what to do in order to play our part in society. Nowhere by no one has happiness ever been guaranteed, and far from everyone achieves it. Most gods we believed in are dead, or at the very least we care less about them. Perhaps that's because we are less superstitious, or perhaps God simply hid his identity among things we consider rational and logical. Happiness, structure, love, wealth. Instead of promising a good afterlife, the modern God promises a good future while living. You never fully achieve it though, it's always a few steps ahead. When we get one, we move on to the next, and the more we have, the more we want. We are still slaves to a god, he just doesn't appear like the classic kind. This god has no greater meaning, no afterlife, only a reward you get for working hard and serving the greater good. But what then happens to the losers? The ones who can't find love, grind careers, or develop high self-esteem? They go to modern hell, and the devil of the 21st century is nihilism. Undying, the almighty Dirge, is basically a zombie, sort of similar to Pudge, Death Prophet, and Necrophos. I have a 2-part video about the undead in the top right corner if you want to know more about them in general. Undying can no longer recall what his life was like when he was alive. The only thing he remembers is a battle before he was torn from his horse and thrown into the pit of the dead god with his brothers. In the dark pit, slowly over time their minds got eroded until time, their thoughts, and eventually their sanity were gone, replaced by an insatiable hunger. They started attacking each other, tearing each other apart and consuming one another, and then a faint sound of a song came. It grew louder and louder until he became consumed by the dirge song, and he accepted his new fate to spread the dead god's influence. He was now the herald of the dead god, undying the almighty Dirge. And it was his job to guide the undead in their battle against the living. As the last sentence in his lore says, his job was now to trudge on through death unending, that the dirge might never end. Okay, so important note, the dirge is both the name of Undying the hero and the song the dead god uses to enslave the undead legion. It is both a person and a song. A dirge is IRL, a song typically sung at funerals or while mourning the dead. Now that we have that out of the way, let's look at his relationships. The most interesting ally who speaks to Undying is Kunkka.
Ah, Undying! We'll make a ghastly crew.
Here, Kunkka once again confirms that he is too an undead, just not the same kind as Dirge. There's quite a lot of heroes who have voice lines when killing Dirge, but none interesting. Mars says this though.
Listen, you don't need to actually hum the dirge. It does just fine on its own.
This means that maybe the source of the song isn't the undead singing it, but the dead god himself? Void Spirit says this.
In some ways, you're more alive than most mortals will ever be.
I will come back to these. The most interesting voice lines are the ones coming from Undying himself.
We welcome kings and tyrants.
Which is a bit strange. So the dead god is fine with having ambitious people beneath him? He's not threatened by their unavoidable plotting? Another nice one.
Does it end, Death Prophet?
Death Prophet can tell anyone when they will die, except herself. It's interesting that Undying wants to know, like he's secretly wanting to stop following his dead god's bidding.
Become us, Necrolite. Much is owed to the Necrolite.
These are interesting because it means Necrophos is not on the dead god's side already, despite his quarrel with the Romescu faithful. I have vids that go more in depth about this, such as my Dota theology video, but basically put, the Romescu is a religion similar to Christianity, who have had many feuds against the living dead, such as the Fields of Endless Carnage, Necrophos' shenanigans, and also the dead god. Undying has a lot of references to Left 4 Dead. I've never played that game, so I don't know them all, but it seems to be that he calls Dota heroes by characters from that game. There is an ominous presence that for hundreds of years, if not since the dawn of the first day, has plagued some of the living. He is called the Dead God, and with the power of the dirge, a hypnotic song, he converts the living and rises the dead to do his bidding. Saying they worship him is not entirely accurate, as they don't really have a choice and are more his puppets, but regardless, he controls endless armies of dead soldiers. But, other than his followers not really consenting to their commitment, there's one other thing that's a bit off. The dead god doesn't convert just anyone. If he did as many as he could, the entire Dota world would be consumed by now. The Dirge song, and the god himself, has the power of poisonous nihilism, toxic darkness and fatalism. Is the Dirge, and the force that rises the dead, just the thought that life is meaningless? And then, ironically, that turns you into a literal zombie, not dead, neither alive? The dead god and his influence is the mortal enemy of the Romescu faith. The Romescu faith has been around for centuries, but it is unknown what exactly they believe in. Necrophos, who was previously a cardinal in the religion, references biblical verses, and there's many other details that makes it extremely similar to Catholic Christianity. Necrophos was the scamming cardinal of the Romescu, taking advantage of a plague perhaps conjured by himself, slowly killing most of the Romescu while taking a lot of money for healing the last few survivors. As punishment, he was sent to the plague ward, where he was supposed to die a long painful death to illness, but he turned out to be immune, and instead it made him the powerful Pope of Pestilence. The Cathedral of Romescu is where the worshippers reside. They have a lot in common with both Omni-Knight and Chen's gods, and are perhaps the same. We know that they purged the fields of endless carnage, where corpses don't decompose. The Pangolier has described the purge as dark, so maybe the fields of endless carnage weren't evil at all. In Artifact, we have a few sources that also support this, that they were in fact peaceful people, even civilized. The clerics and warrior priests, as we know, purged them still though, and were led by Lady Anshu. Lady Anshu is also not a fan of Necrophos, as Pudge hints to when he tells Necro that maybe if he gave Lady Anshu his head, she would stop harassing Pudge's undead friends. By the way, in Artifact, Chen is seeking out the Romescu and specifically Lady Anshu, and he wants to do it to convert them to the Holy Knights of the Fold. But he also mentions that Lady Anshu might be the second coming of Corella. Corella was an extremely powerful priestess from the Cathedral of Romescu a long time ago. She formed the Chains of Obsession from Purge's Dota to Arcana cosmetic. The chains were meant to bind the servants of the dead god, but over time they became corrupted by the Dirge instead and took a mind of their own and destroyed her homeland. The Romescu is the dead god's mortal enemy. The Romescu is basically Catholic Christianity, and perhaps one of the three interpretations of the same god, like in our world's Abrahamic religions, Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. Chen and the Knights of the Fold worship Obelisk, who they consider the one true god, which they violently force victims to convert to. That and the fact that he knows Krella and wants to convert Romescu faithful specifically to the Knights of the Fold makes me suspect that they actually worship the same deity. But what deity is that? There's one more religion and god, which also practices this violent obsession of monotheism. The Omniscience, the all-seeing one. Omniscience means the state of knowing everything, and is often associated with specifically monotheistic gods. The Omniscience faith has scripture, and members go on bloody crusades. Pyrrhus Thunderwrath, the Omni-Knight, is one such crusader, but seeing his associates die around him over a very long period of time wore down his faith and he started questioning it. This doubt was quickly erased though when he actually got to meet the All-Seeing One, and his faith grew stronger than ever. Another hero that confirms the omniscience is real is Zeus, who claims to know him. Bloodseeker too, or at least his gods, the Flayed Twins, want the omniscience as a sacrifice, implying they know he is real. Okay, but why did I tell you all this about the different Christian gods and also different undead people? Well, because if the Christian-ish gods are maybe the same, maybe the undead are also the same. What if Pudge and Undying are clinging onto life using the same power source? Unfortunately, I don't have an answer for you, it's just an interesting thought and question to think about. Maybe it has to do with Rix taking the oath in Artifact, raising the dead in Roseleaf, but the timeline is so messy at this point, it's hard to promise anything. In Antimage's lore, he describes the ideology of the dead god as poisonous nihilosophy. Nihilosophy translates to study of nothing or study of nothingness. But Antimage could also mean nihilism in specific, which usually means the rejection of morals because life is meaningless. Some people will argue what the actual definition of nihilism is, but don't listen to them. Language changes always, and the definition of a word is how people uses it, not how some boomer wrote down their generation's definition in a book. Nihilism is essentially, when most people use it, about how nothing matters, we are all gonna die, there is no meaning, ergo life is meaningless. You might as well do bad or just simply do nothing at all. That's what I meant earlier when I said the Dirge song, and the god himself, has the power of poisonous nihilism. Is the Dirge, and the force that rises the dead, just the thought that life is meaningless, and then, ironically, that turns you into a literal zombie, not dead, neither alive? People who subscribe to this philosophy will often feel both inadequate and superior at the same time. On one hand, you're useless to society and can't perform, but on the other hand, you see all these people, the normies, the NPCs going about their day, never questioning meaning other than God or zodiac signs. And that's what the Void Spirit meant, at least that's how I interpret it. The thing is, I myself am a nihilist, but not in the sense that I'm a depressed little asshole who's bitter and just wants to lie in bed and do nothing. Or, well, maybe I am, but additionally, the nihilism is kind of liberating too. If there is no meaning to life, there's no meaning to death. And if there's no meaning, then you can basically not mess up. No matter how ridiculous life gets, it's pointless, so who cares? Nihilism can open up a door to something you were previously too afraid to pursue because the stakes are too high. And knowing that there is no God, no anything, can, similarly to how the solidarity religious people feel, make you too feel like you're part of something greater. Nihilism doesn't close the door of ambition, it opens it and makes it far more attractive with the right attitude. I'm Anger, thanks for coming to my TED Talk. Pete.